2019 was arguably the worst year there ever was in WWE, and yes, even worse than the pandemic era. In today's video, we're going to be looking back at that year and reasons why it was that bad, and there could even be things that you've completely forgotten about. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now before I get into all the negatives, first I'm going to highlight some of the positives in 2019, but do not be mistaken. The negatives far outweigh the positives. The first obvious one is of course Kofi Kingston winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania, though we all know how that ended and we'll get into that later. Then there was the Royal Rumble pay-per-view itself, which was actually pretty good, with both Rumbles having the correct winner. NXT Black and Gold was still red hot, putting on some of the greatest WWE pay-per-views of all time, which made it so that WWE had to include NXT in Survivor Series. There was even a brief period where it looked like Buddy Murphy was getting a mini push and put on a great match with Roman Reigns on a random edition of SmackDown. Then of course there's WrestleMania being main evented by women for the first time, and then possibly the best part of 2019, the debut of The Fiend. But with all that good, there's still also a lot of bad. First, I'm going to talk about Seth Rollins being booked terribly as a babyface champion to the point it made the entire crowd turn on him. It started off great with a fun opening match to WrestleMania 35, with Seth Rollins defeating Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. But what would follow was a poorly booked feud with Baron Corbin that went on for 2 pay-per-views straight. One of them being the pay-per-view called Stomping Grounds, which only drew 3,000 fans in attendance. It also didn't help that they paired him with his real-life wife, Becky Lynch, who was also in a very lackluster feud with Lacey Evans. Becky has even gone on record to say that she really wasn't up for pairing with Seth Rollins, as it just felt very forced. Then at Extreme Rules, they did a mixed tag team match with the Universal Championship and the Raw Women's Championship on the line. After Seth and Becky won, Brock Lesnar would cash in his Money in the Bank to recapture the Universal Championship, which leads me into another worst moment of 2019, which is Brock Lesnar winning the Money in the Bank. The men's ladder match was stacked, with the participants being Andrade, Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre, Ricochet, Baron Corbin, Finn Balor, and Mustafa Ali, who was actually the original planned winner. Most of these participants would have been a great choice to win the briefcase, but instead, right as Mustafa Ali was about to grab the briefcase, Brock Lesnar came out and ended up knocking him off the ladder. This moment came off so ridiculously comical because Mustafa Ali had all the time in the world to take the briefcase before Lesnar could come down to stop him. It ended up making everyone involved look bad, and it's become another reason why Money in the Bank has been lackluster in the past 5 to 6 years. But going back to the Lesnar vs Seth Rollins feud, after he cashed it in on Seth, it would lead to them going one-on-one once again at SummerSlam. And the build to the match made Seth Rollins look really bad, almost coming off as weak and pathetic. He would come out every week and do nothing but complain. Seth also started to gain a bad reputation online as well, with hating on AEW, which was gathering a lot of excitement since it was a brand new startup company at the time and having a very first successful pay-per-view called Double or Nothing. Now Seth Rollins would go on to defeat Brock Lesnar for the championship once again, but unfortunately for Seth, the same night he won back the belt, the Fiend made such an impactful debut, it made the fans want him to almost immediately win the Universal title from Seth. So due to popular demand, WWE ended up making a feud between Seth and The Fiend around October season, which at that time was notorious for the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. So Seth and The Fiend ended up facing each other in a Hell in a Cell match, and when it was all said and done, people were already calling it one of the worst Hell in a Cell matches of all time, and some were even saying that the Fiend character is already dead and buried after the way WWE decided to book the match. The beginning of the match already started off pretty rough, with the strange choice to light the entire ring red, and with the cell also being red, it made it tough for the audience that was there live to see the action. Then after that, instead of just putting the belt on the Fiend, they made Seth retain the title by a disqualification. Yeah, a disqualification inside a match that has no rules. It made an entire mockery of what Hell in a Cell is, and so many people were calling for WWE to take a break from doing Hell in a Cell matches for at least a few years, because of how much damage it did to both Seth and The Fiend. But hey, at least X-Pac's reaction will forever be hilarious.
You may not ask me back for another one of these, but how the hell do you get DQ'd now?
Did he get DQ'd? Frickin'
cell.
Due to the backlash that match received, WWE decided to put the title on Bray a month later at Crown Jewel, but at that point, the damage was already done. Then of course it wouldn't be long after that when The Fiend went on to lose to Goldberg, but that was in 2020. Earlier I mentioned Baron Corbin. And let me just say right now, Baron Corbin was involved in a lot of bad moments in 2019. One of them being that Seth Rollins feud I mentioned earlier, and then there's one of the biggest misses in WWE history, Baron Corbin retiring Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin were having a rivalry around this time because Kurt Angle was kicked out as Raw General Manager and was replaced by Baron Corbin. So this all led to these two going head to head at WrestleMania 35, and no matter who the winner was, this was going to be Kurt's final match. So going into this match, the fans already couldn't care less about this match, and nobody wanted to see Baron Corbin be Kurt Angle's last opponent. The one person everyone wanted to see Kurt wrestle for the final time was 100% John Cena. Cena's first match was against Kurt Angle, and it would have been a full circle moment if Cena was the one to retire Kurt Angle. The rivalry between Angle and Corbin didn't have enough heat in it to feel like a retirement match, and it ended up just being a 10-minute dumpster fire with an already tired out crowd from all the matches that happened prior to this. Kurt Angle deserves so much more than what he was given. The last terrible moment involving Baron Corbin was his rivalry with Roman Reigns. This took place closer to the end of the year, and all that really needs to be said about why this was so terrible is because for whatever reason Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode was paired up with Baron Corbin, and they tied Roman Reigns to the turnbuckle post and poured dog food all over him. It was received poorly from the WWE fans, and they couldn't wait for this rivalry to be over. Eventually, Roman Reigns would get his revenge on Baron Corbin when him and the Usos did the exact same thing. And keep in mind, this was still during a time when WWE was trying so hard to get Roman Reigns over with the fans, and this certainly did not help that. Another aspect that made 2019 so bad was the introduction of the wild card rule. The wild card rule was a concept WWE created where 3 superstars from the opposite brand can show up on either Raw or SmackDown. And this was a failed attempt to regain ratings and interest in the product, and it made absolutely zero sense, and it completely devalued the brand split. It was getting to the point where people thought WWE was ending the brand split altogether, especially when there were occasions where some superstars were challenging for the opposite brand's world title. Then who could forget the absolute disaster that was Goldberg versus The Undertaker? This was a huge first time ever matchup, and they waited to do this at a Saudi show when both guys were far out of their prime. Now, I'm sure most of you already know the story, but if the off chance you don't, right before Goldberg was about to make his entrance, he headbutted the door so hard that he gave himself a concussion. Getting a concussion right before a match with The Undertaker probably isn't the best thing to do. Then to make matters worse, he then overshot a huge jump to the turnbuckle, hitting his head on the post, busting him open for the rest of the match. With so many scary close calls in this match, this is something to watch if you're feeling in the mood to cringe. Now, as I said earlier, Kofi Kingston winning the WWE title at WrestleMania 35 was an amazing moment and something that happened on accident. This was never going to be the original plan, but the fans got Kofi so over that it forced WWE's hands to pull the trigger on him winning the title. Very similar to 5 years prior, when the WWE fans forced WWE to put Daniel Bryan in the main event of WrestleMania 30, who coincidentally enough was the guy Kofi beat for the championship. But unfortunately, the title reign itself didn't really feel all that important. It felt like WWE didn't know who to put up against Kofi as credible challengers for his belt, and sort of just threw random guys in to face him. A prime example of this would be Dolph Ziggler, who at the time was not even close to deserving a WWE title match, based on where he was at the time on the card. There was absolutely no build to this, and it just came out of nowhere, and it was genuinely tough to care about. Especially after the hilarious promo Dolph Ziggler cut, screaming, "It should have been me! It should have been me!" Now, one rivalry I did enjoy was Randy versus Kofi, because that story at least felt a little bit more organic, based on the history that they have together. But then, shortly after this rivalry was finished, WWE made their SmackDown debut on Fox in October, which apparently was a cursed month with being a terrible month. To make the move to Fox a big deal, WWE put Brock Lesnar in a title match against Kofi Kingston, and get this, beat him in 8 seconds. A 6-month title reign over just like that. The amount of fans this upset would be impossible to count, and if it couldn't get any worse, immediately after the match, former UFC fighter Cain Velasquez came out to confront Lesnar face to face, leading to what was another waste of time, which was them going one-on-one at Crown Jewel. Brock beat him easily, and the whole thing just felt unfair to Kofi Kingston, especially when he never got a fair rematch with Brock, and with how he showed no emotion that he lost it so quickly. He unfortunately was just relegated back down to the tag team division and carried on as if nothing happened. The only time we got to see any resentment from Kofi to Brock was in the 2020 Royal Rumble, where not much came of that either. It was all around an unfortunate end for Kofi in the main event scene. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about is another thing that was just shoved down our throats, which was the reign of terror Shane McMahon was on. He inserted himself in a tournament that they were doing called the Best in the World tournament, and he ultimately won the whole thing, which that in itself is just a joke. He then turned heel very shortly after this, due to him getting a massive ego from winning the tournament, thinking he was actually the best wrestler in the world. His official heel term came when he turned on The Miz, and that led to them going head-to-head at WrestleMania 35. And the story was built on The Miz trying to get revenge on Shane, but also to get his dad to be finally proud of him. Of course though, Shane ultimately won the match, and from there, he was appearing on almost every show except NXT, and he was very annoying to watch, almost to the point of it being channel-changing television. He even feuded with Roman Reigns at one point, and believe it or not, actually beat him. This Shane McMahon heel run was getting to the point where there was rumors that WWE was going to give him the WWE Championship from Kofi Kingston, who was still the WWE Champion at the time. Now obviously losing to Brock Lesnar in 8 seconds isn't the best way to end a 6-month title reign, but I think it's safe to say losing to Shane McMahon would have been far worse. This was truly a terrible heel run, and now AEW fans have to worry about the same thing happening there, with rumors of him joining AEW. 2019 will forever be a year that people will remember for the wrong reasons, but it still gave positive moments to remember, even if it's just the moment itself. All I can say is thank God WWE is finally in the right hands and is doing better than it ever has. But anyways guys, that's the video. Please be sure to leave a like and hit subscribe. Thanks and take care.